And then around the age of 10, I wrote my first musical, which my primary school put on for like a little summer production. And that got me put in the local papers. And at that point, a recording studio in Birmingham saw the article and asked if I'd like to come in and try actually recording some songs in a studio. So that was the first time I ever really had that experience of being in a studio. And that was the moment I sort of changed from thinking I want to do musical theater to, oh, actually, I think maybe I want to be a singer-songwriter.
Hey, Maisy, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. My name's Adam, and this is about you and your journey in music. And we'll talk about the Tiesto song that came out and the tour you have coming up and everything else. That's cool. Awesome. So I was kind of start off with your origin story. You're born and raised. Were you born and raised in London or in England? I saw London, but then I also saw like small town, so I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm nowhere near London. I think people hear England and think London, but London actually is like 3 hours away from where I grew up. I did grow up in a very small, middle of nowhere country town called Claverley, very far from London.
Okay, that's funny. Yeah, IMDb, man. Somebody said London native.
Gosh, well, I'm like, I know London.
Yeah, I was gonna say I saw another thing that said that you were born in a small part of England, and then I'm like, huh, interesting. But anyway, sorry, definitely not London.
I'll have to get that corrected because yes, not London, very far from London.
Okay, so what was it like where you grew up then?
Oh, it was lovely. I mean, the population was about 1,200, so it was very small.
Very small.
Yeah.
That's the size of my high school graduating class.
Wow. Oh my God. Yeah, it was tiny. So didn't really see a lot of people. It was in like the middle of the countryside, so lots of nature, which I really loved. I was always climbing trees and like spending time in the garden with all the animals there. So I loved it.
Mm-hmm. That is awesome. What about music? Do you come from a musical family or like creative household or?
Not so much. My grandfather on my dad's side used to play the piano and like occasionally write his own songs. I never met him. Unfortunately, he died long before I was born. But that I think is the closest thing I have to a musical connection in my family.
Interesting. So how do you get into music or interested in music? Do you remember?
Yeah, so everyone in my family knew that I would always do something with singing because I've just displayed such an intense interest from a very early age. And then around the age of 10, I wrote my first musical, which my primary school put on for like a little summer production. And that got me put in the local papers. And at that point, a recording studio in Birmingham saw the article and asked if I'd like to come in and try actually recording some songs in a studio. So that was the first time I ever really had that experience of being in a studio. And that was the moment I sort of changed from thinking I want to do musical theater to, oh, actually, I think maybe I want to be a singer-songwriter.
Wow. Okay. So 10 years old, you wrote your own musical?
It wasn't very good,
It doesn't matter.
But yes,
I couldn't even do that, and I'm almost 40. That's crazy. So you wrote all the songs, the dialogue, storyline, everything?
Yeah, I did do that.
Oh my gosh! And then how long is the show? Like, how do you pitch something like that to your primary school? Like, I wrote this, and they're like, "Oh yeah, of course you did." And then you have to like show them the whole piece, like, I don't know, 30 minutes of what, this whole long thing of all these songs and dialogue and story. And
from what I remember, I made a basic pitch deck with the premise of the musical and characters. My primary school was very small, which also helped with this. There were 10 people in my class.
Oh, wow. How many parts were there? Were there 10 parts in the show?
There were something like that, 10 or 12. We had some people from the younger years come in too, but it was a small production. I would say probably around like 20 at most.
Wow. That is so, I mean, that's amazing. So did you do that again, or is that the only one you done? And then once you went to the studio, you're like, wait a minute, I like this more.
In my free time, I have written a few musical movies that I've currently done nothing with. I'm very passionate about them, but they just sit there in my little data banks. One day I would love to maybe pursue that a bit further because I am very passionate about it. But for the most part, I've been focusing just on my own personal artistry.
Yeah. Okay. But even at that young of an age, you did the one and got an opportunity to record, and that was like, oh, well, I kind of like the songwriting thing more.
Yeah, I think so. That was a really interesting moment to me to be able to write things for myself as opposed to writing things for like the fictional premise of a story, which is still really fun. And I love doing it in my free time. But
Sure. Okay. So as far as like writing these songs, was it all just done vocally and you're coming up with melodies, or do you play, or did you at the time play piano or guitar or anything like that?
yeah, I play piano. I play a tiny bit of guitar, but not as well as piano. I learned piano when I was a child. So I mainly would write everything on the piano, and I still kind of write that way for the most part.
Okay. So you go to the studio at 10, and at that point, are they like, let's record the musical songs that you had written, or are they like, what do you do when you make to that studio for the first time?
They wanted to record my own original things, and so I started having to prepare my own original things to come into the studio with. So I would sort of use that as an objective to start writing for myself. I mean, the songs I wrote at that age were very broody and unserious, very much like, oh,
yeah, 10-year-old, right?
And my life is the worst it's ever going to be. And this boy I have a crush on doesn't like me back. And it feels like the world is ending, you know, like so melodramatic looking back on those songs. But it was a really good learning experience to get to record them.
Yeah. So how long do you end up, like, are you, because you're 10 or so at that time, and then you go into high school, are you still involved in musical theater? Or are you at that point, like, I want to do this songwriting thing, and from there forward, it was just really focusing on that?
Yeah, no, I kept being involved with the musical theatre program for as long as possible. Near the end of my time at my high school, I did start to get pretty severely bullied. And I think that ultimately shot a lot of my confidence out of me. And then I sort of stepped away from musical theatre and didn't really come back to it again after that.
Mm-hmm.
But up until that point, I was still very heavily involved.
Okay. So you were getting bullied. That's awful. I'm sorry to hear that. And
you know, it's all right. Kids are mean.
Yeah, they totally are. And were you writing your own songs at that point as well? I mean, obviously you were, obviously, because you're recording, but like, were you showing people your original songs, or was that something you're like, I don't even want to pull those out because I might get even more bullied at this point?
I never showed anyone at school. I wasn't really very close to many people at school, but I showed my parents, and they would always, you know, as parents do, they would always be like, oh, it's so brilliant. And I'd be like, you're just saying that because you're my parents. And it wasn't until we got the offer to move to Los Angeles to pursue music professionally that I thought, oh, maybe they're not just saying it because they're my parents, you know, like maybe there is actually something here.
Okay, that was what I was going to ask, what the moment was. So you got an offer to move to LA.
Yes.
And how does that happen?
So I got an offer to be signed to a major label who had heard some of my tracks and I guess saw potential in me. So
and were you posting those on, like, do you remember where they found them? Were they Bandcamp?
I think something to do with my dad. I think my dad knew someone who ended up, it just went like, my dad sent it to his business partner. His business partner liked it and sent it to someone he knew. And then they sent it to someone at a label. From what I know, I was very young at the time, so I was told minimal, but that, from what I remember, is the gist of what happened. And then they said, we'd be really interested to meet you and potentially sign you, but you would need to move to LA. And I was being bullied in school anyway, so I thought, absolutely, like, we've got nothing left to lose, let's go.
Yeah. How old were you at that point?
I believe I was 13.
Oh my God. Oh, so you were still really, really young.
Yeah, 14.
Did you move to LA when you were 14 then?
I did. Yeah,
you've been there because and you've been there ever since. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay, so you moved to LA at 14, and then does that pan out, that deal and all that, or did it not? And you just loved LA and decided to stay, or?
It did not pan out. They wanted to sign me, and my parents said no. And they said no. It was something I didn't understand at the time, and I was really sad at the time, but I understand it a lot more now. They essentially said, and this is very true of the industry, when you're an unknown artist, the deals you get signed into with major labels oftentimes aren't very fair and can be very controlling. And their viewpoint was, you know, if you sign with this label, they will dictate everything about you, what you look like, what you sound like, who you are. And
Right.
you are so young, you don't even know that about yourself yet. So we don't want to put you into that when you don't even know that about yourself. So instead, I went into what's called artist development, which is where essentially you work with a lot of different writers and producers and try and figure out like what your sound and what your style is.
Interesting. Yeah, that's awesome that your parents had that foresight to be like,
They
you
were
know
right.
what?
They were right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I could see how at 14 you're like, I want to be on they're gonna make me a pop star. Like, what are you doing? You're taking this all away
It's
from
like,
me.
why
And it's
would you
like,
say no? Here's
well, yeah.
yeah, I think that
You are their product at that point.
Yeah, and I was
Oh.
so little. I definitely couldn't have survived that without like having a sense of identity first.
Yeah, 100%. So then you start what at that point? Are you going to high school when you come to LA or no?
I did like online schooling.
Online schooling?
I found out very quickly I couldn't go to an in-person school with the amount of days I had to have off to be at the studio. They'd like automatically fail me, even though I explained that I had work. So
yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of people have done that are like, yeah, I'm gonna do the packet. Or it was a packet when I was younger that you'd fill out and respond. Yeah, it was pre-internet. But anyway, maybe the internet was just really slow. But so yeah, you did it online then. Okay. And are you like you're working with songwriters, kind of developing your sound? Like at what point do you kind of find your, you know, your footing or what you wanted to do? And then you're like, okay, here's my project. Like when's this Maisy Kay, you know, what you're not doing now, obviously, because it was you're 14, but like, was there a moment or like another kind of milestone that hit that you're like, okay, I think I'm on the right path here? Obviously getting asked to come to LA is a big deal. And then from there, what would you say like kind of the next one was?
I think once I found a producer and a writer that I really enjoyed and I felt like really understood me, I've always been really specific with having a hard time putting myself in a box musically and not wanting to just stick to one genre, which can be challenging because you kind of in a way have to kind of stick to some sort of general genre. So I've definitely played around with a lot of stuff during the years. But I would honestly say I really figured it out 2 years ago. Like 2 years ago is when I finally felt really solid in the image I'm presenting, the music I'm presenting, like what my quote unquote branding is as both an artist and a person. I think honestly 2 years ago was when I really thought, okay, I have it figured out now. I know what it is.
Was there a song or something that happened? Because I mean, you have releases obviously prior to that are all good and have tons of streams, and even you know, the big one that you had with that German DJ that I'm losing my brain.
TheFatRat?
Yeah. Wasn't that like 2 years ago? That was like 4 years ago or more.
That was a while ago now.
Yeah, the storm. Yeah, the storm. Yeah. Sorry, I like lost my train of thought there. So you're saying 2 years ago is when you really kind of felt like you found it, though?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Was there a song that you could point to that, or a moment, or was it a full one of your EPs, or?
Yeah, so Metamorphosis was the EP that came out before my latest one. And that one was sort of meant to, it was called Metamorphosis because it was supposed to represent, okay, I've gone through all of this life experience, all of these different sounds, and I now feel really strongly about who I want to be and who I am becoming. And for me, I think that really started not even so much with a song, but I started raising butterflies just in my personal life about 2 years ago. And I just found such a sense of fulfillment from doing that and such a beauty and love for these creatures. And I started incorporating butterflies and more fantasy and whimsy, which is something that I loved as a little kid and then kind of had it bullied out of me a little bit through my teenage years. I started just bringing that back. And that felt really good and really natural to do that. So that's why I think the raising butterflies thing was the start of me really locking in who I wanted to be. And I thought, you know what? I want to bring back all the stuff that 10-year-old me loves, because 24-year-old me actually really still loves them too, you know? Sure. And it's okay to love them.
I love that. What was it like having that song, The Storm, do so well? Like, I mean, that must have been a big moment, obviously.
Yeah, it was huge. And I think the thing that resonated most with me was that I sing in Na'vi in that song, which is the fictional language from James Cameron's Avatar.
Oh, is that the? I was trying to figure it out. I'm like,
yeah,
I was
that's what it is.
definitely wasn't English or another language that I could pick out anything from. I'm like,
Oh no. But what I love about that is when I was 10 years old, I learned the language Na'vi just because I was obsessed with Avatar. I was obsessed with it. I wanted to learn it so bad. I'd print out homework sheets. At the time, there were very limited resources online to learn Na'vi, so I had to really look. And then I got really bullied because I'd speak it at school and I'd be like climbing trees, and that's obviously weird. So I got really picked on it. And I think what I loved the most about seeing The Storm do so well is it sort of reclaimed that like 10-year-old in me, that person that loved that, and to be so heavily praised for the thing I was so heavily bullied for in school felt very cool. It's like, okay, there are people out there who like this weird alien language like me and who think it's cool and not embarrassing. And it felt cool to just own my stuff and be like, I'm a little bit of a nerd. I always have been. I like singing and speaking in this fictional language. And here you go.
I love that. Sidebar question real quick. Thoughts on the second Avatar?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. I mean, those visuals are like nothing I've ever seen. It is truly such a visual masterpiece. And I cried at multiple points, especially, I forget what they're called, but they're the creatures that are supposed to be like the whales, you know?
Oh, yeah.
What
I can't remember what they're called either. It's been a minute since I saw the movie.
But when that one had the redemption and it like destroyed all the humans, I was like crying in the theater, like.
That's hilarious. Yeah, because I thought it was pretty good. I'm not a way huge fan. I mean, I liked Avatar when it came out. I'm old, so I was like, oh, this is good. And then it was a long time coming for the next one. But that's cool that you had such a great experience with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so so you Metamorphosis was like the kind of the pick, turning point for you, it sounds like there. And you have the most recent one, Wanderlust. That's the newest EP that you put out. And then you just did a Tiesto remix as well of a song that you had out before, though. Karma is a bitch, but it's Karma. Well, tell me about Wanderlust. Like after you kind of find your sound with Metamorphosis, going into that next EP, did it make it easier? Because you're like, oh, I kind of know where I'm headed. I kind of have like a North Star that I'm headed towards.
Yeah, what was really cool about Wanderlust is I wasn't trying to write an EP. Like I wasn't actually trying to do anything. I just was essentially falling in love for probably the first real time in my life. And I write about things that are very personal to me and are very real in my life, which up until this point have usually been pretty sad. And so this was the first time in my life where I felt really inspired to write like happy, joyous music. And I never thought this is for an EP or I need this to like sound like something. I just thought I'm feeling such strong emotions that I've never really felt before. And I literally have to talk about it. And for me, this is how I talk about it. And so originally it was supposed to just be for me and the person that the songs were about. Like it was going to be like a little gift for them to be like, I made these pieces of art for you. Okay. And at a certain point, I believe it was when I wrote Technicolor Honeymoon, I was like, oh, God damn it. I'm like, no, these songs are actually really cool. And I think I need to show my team them. And of course they loved them. And they were like, Maisy, you have to put these out. So then we just had an EP already because I'd already written like 12 songs. Like it was already.
Oh, wow. And then, so you just dwindled it down to 6.
Literally. We just smashed them all together, put them in a 2-part EP, and that's Wanderlust.
Wow. Okay. So the first half is out. The second half is still on the way.
Yes.
Okay. So the Dawn is the one that's currently in.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. I didn't realize it was a 2-parter. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Heaven with You is such a great song.
Thank you. I really like that one. I actually co-wrote that with the person the song's about, which is really cool. I've never written a song with like a partner before, so that was a really fun experience.
Oh, wow. That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is so awesome. And then you just did Tiesto had the remix of Karma, which recently came out as well. That's huge to have somebody of his, level decide.
Oh my God, yeah.
For your record.
Such an honor. He killed it too. I actually like his remix more than the original, which may be controversial, but I just think every time I listen to it, it gets me so pumped up. I'm like, oh, it's so groovy.
That is cool. So, well, real quick, when's the second half of the EP coming out, or second?
Yeah, so actually my first single from the second part of it comes out tomorrow.
Really? Okay. What is
Yeah,
it? Tell me about it so we can talk
Love.
about it.
It's called Love is a God.
Okay.
And I've been performing it on the Asia stretch of the Purple Skies tour with Tori Kelly, which has been really cool. So everyone there has like already heard it and knows what's coming. But it's sort of this song about like the concept of love and what a very strong purpose it gives me in life, sort of like a spiritual experience almost. Hence why I went, love is a God, because to me, love is the driving force in my life and the thing that like brings me purpose. So that's sort of what it's about.
And is this like it's the dawn is the first part? What's the second half called?
It's called
Dusk?
Wanderlust, the Dusk.
The Dusk. Okay,
Yeah.
and was it hard to kind of decide which is the dusk a darker side of these songs, or
Yeah, I would say
how you
so.
split it up?
I describe it as like a nighttime sister to part one. It was pretty easy to separate them when we had all the songs already pretty much, and we just listened to them. And there were some that in general have a bit of a darker and grittier feel. So it was pretty easy to just sort of separate, okay, this makes sense for part one, this makes sense for part two. So I would say there's definitely a little more edge to part two that part one does not have.
Okay. Very, very cool. And obviously you're on tour, or did the part of the tour with Tori Kelly thus far, and then your next one kicks off, I think in LA or Anaheim or something, right? Coming up.
Yeah, we start the US run in Anaheim on the 12th.
That's awesome. So what's it like? I mean, getting asked I had her on my show like 4 years ago. She's amazing.
Oh, she's great.
Well, having somebody like Tori Kelly ask you to, join them, what was that like?
Oh man, I mean, it was incredible when I got the phone call. I mean, I already had multiple Tori Kelly songs on my phone just as a fan of hers. I mean, she's such a brilliant vocalist. So it was a huge honor, because you have to get pitched and people have to like approve you and to think, oh, okay, like she likes what I do enough to want me to essentially represent her on this tour with her. I mean, what an honor. You couldn't ask for a greater one. She is such a talent, especially seeing her live. She is every bit as talented live as she is in the studio. Like she is unbelievable. So it's truly been so exciting to just get to open for such like a brilliant talent like that. And she's so lovely as a person too. Like I have nothing but good things to say about how the tour's gone so far.
That is awesome. And you open up for Jake as well, right?
Yeah, last summer.
So you've had some pretty massive, opportunity with these artists. That's so rad.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. I have a really good team. They really
I saw you post. I was digging in your Instagram. I saw you posted something about having like imposter syndrome and like having like it's nice to have people around you when you get that. Like I would imagine, even the biggest artists have to get that at some point or another. Like, how do you tell me about that? I mean, yeah, why are all these people here? Like, how do I get the? I could see how that would happen. Like, what do you do to get through that?
Yeah, so I suffer with a lot of anxiety and I'm very self-critical. I'm definitely a perfectionist. So I can be overtly hard on myself, as I think, yeah, as you said, a lot of creative people, a lot of artists can be. For me, I think what has really helped, it's a two-part thing for me. Number one is just having a really great support system around me, as well as finding my sound and my imagery in the last 2 years. I also finally developed like a really good group of friends in my personal life, which I didn't always have. And I think that makes a huge difference too, like having that support system around and people that love you, like outside of work, that just like Maisy the person is huge. So I love being able to reach out to my friends and my family whenever I need them. And part two for me is honestly just going out and doing it. I was so convinced before the tour, because I get convinced before every show, which is just my own self-sabotage, I suppose. But I get very convinced that everyone's going to hate it and like everyone's going to laugh at me. And maybe that comes from the bullying in high school, but I'm always like, oh, people are going to make fun of you. People are going to think you're bad. So you actually get out there and you do it and you realize that is not the experience at all. And people are having fun and now you're having fun. And for me, both times I've been on tour now, I'm so nervous and so scared. And I get up on that stage and I see the crowd and it melts away. And I realize, oh no, this is fun. I love this job and they like it. And I don't need to be this mean to myself. So I think getting out there and just doing it is helpful for me.
Okay. Yeah, I could. that's wild to come out to you're probably playing huge rooms with Tori Kelly and Jake, right? I mean, massive,
Yeah.
man.
Like there's thousands sometimes. It's really cool.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Have you ever read the book Big Magic?
No.
Oh, it's about kind of the creative, like having those self-doubt. It's just interesting. I didn't know if you had heard
Oh, I might have to check that out actually.
Elizabeth Gilbert, I think, wrote it.
Okay.
Did like Eat, Pray, Love. But anyway, there's a lot of stuff in there about, you know, I don't know, if you were looking for, there's this way to do it. You could be self-critical and self-sabotaging, or you could not do that. And like,
Yeah.
it's a very fascinating book. Kind of similar to like what like The Artist's Way or something like that.
Okay. Oh, I'll definitely check that out. Yeah.
Big Magic.
Give the suggestion.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. Are you, I mean, with this EP, so you had done all these songs where they weren't necessarily written as it was going to be an EP. They were just a collection of songs for this person. Did you record them all like in the same time period, or were they just songs that you had kind of thrown together? Like when it came to actually writing the songs that are to come out on the Dusk and that have already been released, like when were those all kind of put together?
Yeah, it definitely was not at the same time. Heaven with You was the last one that got finished for The Dawn. And I actually finished writing that one on the music video for Sunlight, which was February of this year. So that one was causing me a lot of trouble. It was like half finished, and I had a piano in this field for the Sunlight music video. And so in between the takes, I just wrote the rest of the song.
No way. So you finished it on the shoot of the other
set, yeah. And everyone was watching me and they were like, is she practicing a song right now? I'm like, yeah, just give me 1 minute. So that one was finished there. And then for The Dusk, the final song for it is called Eternity. And I'm actually recording that one next week. That one got finished. I wrote that one. Oh my God, good story. I wrote that one the day I got the phone call about going on tour with Tori Kelly, because I felt so inspired and excited about the tour. I sat down and I wrote that final song for part 2.
Really? So you get the phone call. Obviously, you're like, "Woo, this is amazing! I can't believe it!" Inspired. You sit down, write the song, and let's record it. This is good. This is gonna make it.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, that probably doesn't happen too often.
No, it doesn't. Normally, it doesn't come that quickly, but I was just so excited about it. I was like, I need to write something right now. I'm inspired, I'm excited, and it came out really quickly.
That is awesome. Well, I love what you're doing. I can't wait to hear that second half of the EP, or the second EP, I should say. And congratulations on the tour with Tori Kelly and everything else you have going on. I appreciate your time, Maisy. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
I have one more question for you before I let you go. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yeah, something I've always been saying lately is do it for you, because I think it's really easy to get caught in that cycle of trying to make a hit, right? Trying to make something that's going to go viral on TikTok, or something that a label's going to love, or something to get on the radio. And it gets so easy to get caught up in that sort of I have to make a hit thing. And I actually find that to be an incredible creative block. And it sort of ruins the fun of it all and the joy of it all, or at least it definitely did for me during those few years when I really struggled with that. And the thing that worked best for me is scrapping all of that and not going into the process thinking, how can I make a hit? And just going back to, let me write about my life and what feels good for me. And whatever that ends up being is fine. So I would say, if you do it for you, don't do it for a label, don't do it for a social media app. Just make the music you want to make and keep it fun, because it's so easy for it to stop being fun. And if that happens, it's game over. You know, it should always be fun and it should always fulfill you. And if you do it for you, it will.